Welcome back to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're jumping into neuroethology.
Yeah, the brain basis of, well, how animals act in the wild, essentially.
Right. We've got some really interesting source material here, and the idea is basically to unpack, what makes them tick
Mhm.
at that fundamental brain circuit level.
Exactly. It's all about how the nervous system allows animals to, well, survive and thrive in their specific environments. The focus is really on those natural behaviors.
Okay, neuroethology. It sounds, well, a lot like behavioral neuroscience, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. There's definitely overlap, for sure.
So what's the main distinction then, if there is one?
Well, I think the key difference is emphasis. Neuroethology really stresses studying animals in their natural habitats, watching what they actually do out there.
Ah, okay. Context matters.
Hugely. Whereas behavioral neuroscience, while related, might sometimes focus more on lab settings, maybe more controlled conditions. Neuroethology asks, how does this specific brain solve the problems the animal faces every single day?
Gotcha. So it's really about linking, say, a specific action you see in the wild
Yeah.
to the actual wiring in the brain. That sounds incredibly complex.
Oh, it is. That's the central challenge, really, and the exciting part.
Right. How do they even start?
Well, it's about mapping how an animal's basic needs,
Right.
finding food, avoiding getting eaten, finding a mate,
This survival
that
piece.
translated into action by these neural pathways. And what's really cool is how sometimes quite simple-looking circuits can drive these super effective, complex behaviors.
Okay, can you give us concrete examples, something that really illustrates that?
Yeah, okay. Um, think about a baby sea turtle right after it hatches on the beach.
Okay, classic image.
Right. It just sort of knows to crawl towards the brightest light it sees, which is usually the moon reflecting off the ocean.
A critical first step for survival.
Absolutely critical. So neuroethologists study the sensory neurons in its eyes, the motor circuits that control its flippers.
The bits that make it move towards the light.
Exactly. And it reveals this largely pre-programmed, hardwired system that drives that vital journey to the sea.
Wow, so the light, the sensory input, just kicks off this instinct, this hardwired behavior.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a hardwired response triggered by a specific cue.
And how do they know for sure it's hardwired, not something quickly learned?
Well, you see it consistently, right? Across countless turtles right from the moment they hatch.
The pattern is just there.
Exactly. The link between the cue, the light, and the action is just really reliable, doesn't seem to require learning.
Okay, so figuring this stuff out, I imagine you need some serious tech to actually peer into the brain while the animal's doing its thing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, researchers use all sorts of tools like electrophysiology, that's basically listening in on the tiny electrical signals neurons use to talk to each other.
Eavesdropping on brain cells.
Kind of. Or
How-
brain imaging techniques to see which parts of the brain become active during a behavior. And even, genetic tools to understand how genes build these circuits in the first place.
But how do they actually find that specific pathway? I mean, you can't just dissect a brain and see the escape from predator circuit labeled, can you?
No, unfortunately not. It's more like careful detective work. Lots of experiments.
Like what kind of experiments?
Well, you might present a very specific stimulus, say the silhouette of a hawk flying overhead for a mouse.
Okay.
And then you record brain activity, see which neurons fire up, and correlate that with the mouse's freezing or escape behavior.
And you can test it further.
Yeah, sometimes researchers might temporarily inhibit or activate a specific tiny brain region and see if that changes the behavior. It's like piecing together a puzzle.
Okay, so a big piece of this puzzle is clearly about survival, isn't it?
Absolutely fundamental. Yeah.
Understanding how these brain circuits directly help the animal just stay alive.
Exactly. I mean, that's the evolutionary bottom line, right? These hardwired behaviors, finding food, dodging danger, finding a mate,
The essentials for passing on genes.
they're all crucial for surviving long enough to reproduce. Neuroethology really digs into the brain's role in making all that happen successfully.
And it's kind of amazing to think that studying these animal brains can actually feed back into our own technology like robotics or AI.
It really does. It's quite fascinating how efficiently animal brains solve particular problems they face, like navigation.
How so?
Well, think about how insects navigate complex terrains with these incredibly small brains. Studying their strategies gives engineers ideas for designing, say, more efficient drones or autonomous robots.
That's a fantastic connection. And it must also be incredible just seeing the diversity, how different species have evolved totally unique brain adaptations.
Oh, completely. Yeah. An owl that relies on hearing to hunt in the dark has a brain structured very differently for auditory processing compared to, say, a monkey that relies heavily on vision.
Different senses, different challenges, different brain wiring.
Exactly right. Evolution shapes the brain, its very architecture, to fit the animal's specific way of life, its ecological niche. It's not one size fits all.
So neuroethology is really where evolution meets neuroscience then. It bridges that gap,
That's a great way to put it. Yes,
studying the brain specifically through that evolutionary adaptive lens.
precisely. By comparing brain structures and the behaviors they produce across different species, we can start to trace how these systems evolved over millions of years. It really highlights the power of natural selection in shaping nervous systems.
Well, this has been really insightful, a fantastic deep dive into neuroethology.
And you found it interesting?
So the main takeaway seems to be it's all about understanding the brain circuitry behind natural animal behaviors observed in their own world.
Exactly, how the nervous system actually produces purposeful action in the context of the animal's environment.
It's like trying to decipher the brain's operating manual for interacting with the real world.
Nicely put, that's it.
And it really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? If we can learn so much from the, sometimes relatively simpler circuits in other animals, what could applying that kind of neuroethological perspective that focus on natural behavior and underlying circuits maybe reveal about the immense complexities of our own behavior?
That's the big, fascinating question, isn't it? Definitely something to think about.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me today.